Hi, my name is Mayana. Welcome to Maya Court, and today I'm going to be talking about my worst books of 2022. It is literally New Year's, so excuse the fireworks in the background. This video isn't particularly in like order or anything because I don't really care that much, and I'm not really going to do a disclaimer because listen, y'all know I can get nasty. So this video is probably going to get nasty, and that's all I gotta say. That's all I have to say. But I'm not gonna do a disclaimer. If anybody has no problem, we can argue in the comments because I have nothing but time. So, and I don't want to waste the time with people who actually care about the video. So let's just get into it because I got some books to talk about. The first book I'm gonna talk about is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I thought I was gonna love this book. Everybody else loved it. It is about these group of college kids who one of their friends dies when they were in college, and you follow a few years later, and the person that they suspected, like, everyone's starting to think that it's not them, and so they're having their reunion and they're trying to figure out like who really killed her. And I thought this book was shitty. I feel like the person who did it was dumb, the reasons they did it were dumb. And it's like whenever there's, I just feel like with thrillers, whenever there's like a whodunit with like a group of people, it's never interesting. Like, it's always going to be somebody in the group, and for that very reason it's never going to surprise me, because I feel like you can figure out everybody in their motives, so then you figure out the person in their motive and you're like, oh, okay, that was it. And then my biggest thing is like, I kept forgetting who fucking died in the book. Like, the character that died was a character like nobody gave a fuck about. Like, I literally kept forgetting who died, and they wouldn't bring her up for like pages, and they would say her name and I'd be like, who the fuck are you talking about? Like, I don't know. It's crazy because Ashley Winstead is actually also on my best books of the year. So the fact that she's on my best and my worst, like, I don't know. I just don't understand like what everyone loved about this book. Like, it wasn't funny, none of the characters were interesting. It had a little bit of romance in there, but like didn't really give a fuck about that. The main character, like, there was, and I don't want to be that kind of person who's like, I just don't see what everyone loves about this book, but like, I don't see what everyone loves about this book. The next book I have is First Semester. This is actually my first read of 2022. This is like the very first book that I read. The very first book that I finished. This is by a black author, and I also didn't know that when I read the book. So it's about this girl, and she has sex with this guy, and then she ends up like going to school and figuring out that he's her professor. So then they kind of start this relationship, and she's supposed to be Italian, and she's just so obsessed with being Italian. She mentions it like every fucking page, and it was just corny. And also, I ranted about this on like one of my reviews on Goodreads, and it made people so fucking mad. But I'm sorry, I as a black person do not want to read about a black author writing about a white character. Like, white people are literally the majority. Like, they're in every book they read. You can go and find a show that's just by POC and there's a white person there somewhere. So it's like, why would I? And like, I could literally pick up any book and read about a white person. So if I've seen a black author, I'm like, oh yay, a black character, and I pick up the book and they're not black, why would I want to read that? I'm sorry, it's just like, I just don't like it. I don't see a reason why black authors write white characters. Leave that to white authors. If this author had wrote about like an Asian person or a Latinx person or like literally any other person of color, I would have been totally fine. But it's the fact that you chose a white person, an Italian white person at that. I don't care. I'm sorry. And it's like, I don't care. The next book I have is Melt for Us. This book was more so bad because, like, okay, so I read this book the beginning of the year. I don't know why I was reading Christmas books in the January, and it's like, that's fine, but it's like, I didn't read any Christmas books in December, so I don't know why I was reading Christmas books in January, but whatever. Actually, it was a Christmas and a Halloween book. So I read Scream for Us, and that was like about these, oh, that was a Halloween romance book. And it was about this girl, and she was at like this Halloween party, and she ends up running to these guys and use a mask, and they end up like sparking this romance. So then this follows like her relationship with those guys. This book was good up until like this really weird like SA scene that it had. Completely ruined the whole book for me. Just, I couldn't do it. I said, there's a line and I'm fucking drawing it. Couldn't do it. The next book is The Never King. This book is a like Peter Pan, like, no, I don't want to say retelling, but like it is. I'm sorry. It's a smutty Peter Pan retelling. I'm just gonna say what it is. It's a smutty Peter Pan retelling. This book has so much potential because the world was great. So it's about this girl, and I forget her name, but she comes from a family of Wendy's. So every I think every generation, like if they have a daughter, then when she turns 18, they're sent to live with like, well, they're kidnapped by Peter Pan, and like he's trying to like figure out, like he's trying to figure out like something, because they either stole something from him, or like they know this secret, but like she doesn't, obviously nobody knows it because he keeps kidnapping them, and he's gonna keep kidnapping like the first woman in their family until he finds what he's looking for. And I think magic is running out. And you also have like Tinkerbell, who's like a pirate queen or something, I don't remember. And so this book follows that, but like I wish it would have focused on that a lot more. It's just more so being smutty, and I just thought this book was weird. Like, it also follows like The Lost Boys, which I love. The Lost Boys, like, this book had so much potential, but it was just like really weird. And there's no romance in this book. They all fucking hate her, and like they're like the twins in the book, like they're like fascinated by her, but they're not like in love with her. Like, they're not really trying to spark a romance. They just want to hook up with her. Like, they're not really like looking for like anything serious. They're just using her. And like, I don't know if it was the author's intention to make us think that this was a romance, and if it was, she did a terrible job at that, because to me it just read like they were just hooking up with her. And then it was like, there's like a bunch of books in this series, so maybe it like develops over time. I'll never know, because I'm not continuing on with this series. The sex scenes were cringy. They came out of nowhere at times, and it was like this one character who's equivalent to like their pet dog. Like, he was just fucking insane, and like if she would have run away, they would just like unleash him on her. And I'm like, what is going on here? Some people don't need to have a pen. Some people need their pens taken away, because what the hell was this? Okay. Next book I'm talking about is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. And I got some gripes with this book. Everyone loves this book, and aside from it being fucking boring, I have a huge actual problem with this book. So this book is like, first of all, the main character is supposed to be black. Didn't know that. Okay, sure, whatever. So this book is about this girl who, her mom died when she was younger, and she ends up becoming friends with like this guy next door to her, and they have like this cutesy little romance. And something ends up happening when they were in high school that like makes them separate from each other. And so he ends up coming back, or they end up like finding each other again, and like the romance sparks. And she has a boyfriend in this book, mind you, which didn't give, like, he's just thrown out the window. Didn't matter anymore in the moment she saw him. And it was just like, first of all, aside from the actual problem that I have from this book, like, I didn't really care about the romance. Like, it was just too like I don't like romance books. Like, it felt insta-lovey. Like, they both had those feelings, and it wasn't like, oh, two idiots in love. Like, they both knew that they were in love with each other. She just was mad at him for a very dumb fucking reason. And so the point that I'm going to talk about is a spoiler. So if you want to read this book, get out of here. So the spoiler that is the reason why they broke up really pissed me off. The reason why they broke up is he was drunk at a party, and this girl was like giving him, you know, and he was drunk and he thought it was the main character. And so when he woke up, he realized that like it wasn't the main character. He was actually really traumatized from it. The main character walked in and thought that it was like, oh, you're cheating on me, so she broke up with him. And then like when it comes time around for like, you know, back together, she's like, oh yeah, I forgive you for like cheating on me. And like, this obviously really traumatized him. And I'm like, he was SA'd, and you kind of just like use this against him. And it's like, it was poor writing on the author's behalf, and it was just so bad. So like, when I was reading reviews, a lot of people didn't even realize that's what was written. Like, a lot of people didn't realize that he had been SA'd. And like, it was just like, I don't know, it was just so shitty. And it just sucks seeing so many people hype this book around, because the main love interest was, and it's like, it shows how the authors think that like, and I don't know, I don't want to just be throwing stuff around out here, but in my mind, it shows that the authors think that like men who are SA just aren't as serious as women are, if they even think that women are. Because it's like, you wrote this scene and you're like, yeah, this is a good reason for them to break up. and he had the trauma. Like, it's not like they didn't write the trauma, and he had the trauma, and he couldn't really sleep with other people because like he would think about that situation, and then nothing. And it's just like, it just sucked. It sucked. It was just so bad. The next book I want to talk about is It Happened One Summer. This was just so hyped up, and I think I knew I kind of wasn't gonna like it because I just kept putting it off for like so long. And it's like, this one didn't suck. I actually don't have like a rant about this or anything like that. It wasn't bad. The smut was a little weird. Some of like the stuff he would say was a little weird, but like it just didn't hit for me. It just didn't hit. Like, it was just really boring. And really, like, I liked the main character, and like I knew the crazy part is like a lot of people just didn't like the main character. I knew I was gonna like her. I actually liked her character development. I love like the rich white girl, like, or not even a rich white girl. I just love like the rich ditzy girl who doesn't care about anyone, only cares about herself, and like the character development that she gets in the end. Like, I love that. I love that trope. It's one of my favorite things ever. But this more so was just like, it was just boring. I didn't really care about their romance. Yeah. The next book I have to talk about is The Bell Jar. So this one is like a classic. And so this is about this girl who's like really depressed, and she's like living in like this hotel, and it just follows her like being really depressed. A lot of people, I was liking it at first because like a lot of people were like, oh, this is like the author writing about herself, because the author did commit suicide. And so it was just like a really interesting book, and I don't know, everything about it was so interesting. But the reason why I hated it was the racism. She said Negro about 78 times. I'm like, girl. And like, yeah, I get this was written in like whatever, like the 1960s or whatever, but come on now. Leave black. Well, I don't understand why black people have to be putting all these classics. And like, okay, we can take that out. Like, that's not that big of a deal. Like, okay, it was written in the 1960s, like whatever. The part that got me was, there was a scene where she kicked this black man and then called him a Negro. What? And I was like, all right, I can't do this. I can't. Like, calling people Negroes here, left and right, that's one thing. But you gonna kick this black man and then call him a Negro after you already kicked him? You gotta call him a Negro too? Like, did this really need to happen? Okay, the next book I'll talk about is We Had to Remove This Post. This book was like, everybody was like hyping this book out. It was a really short story. It was about like these people who work for like, let's say like Facebook, and they are the people who, they monitor like the videos that people post, and they like make sure they flag like videos where like people are like, you know, getting murdered, or like a lot of things like, you know, needs to be flagged. But so it's about like the people who work doing those jobs, and like how like mentally damaging it is, and just the things that they go through. But like, it was weird. It was really boring, and the main character kind of like was just fucking weird. The characters, like, I get that like it's about like how fucked up like these sites can like make you and stuff like that, but I feel like the author didn't write it well. So it just seemed like a bunch of characters saying a bunch of problematic things for no reason. It didn't really focus on how damaging it was. Like, the plot was telling you, like, the back of the book was telling you what the book was supposed to be about, but it was really following a whole different thing. It's really just about this loser girl who's pawning over her ex-girlfriend, and that's it. And then the way that the book ends, like, the book just like ends. Like, it just ends. Like, if I were to just stop talking. And so the next book we have is For Better or For Worse. I am so sorry, Haley, I love you, girl, but there's a lot of thrillers that I read because of Haley that I wanted to put on this list, but I was like, let me not do her. So I would just pick the worst of all of these. I pick the one that I like the worst, and I'm just gonna shit talk that one because I love Haley. I love her recommendation. She makes thrillers sound so fucking good, and then I'll read them and I'll be like, Good thing she doesn't have Goodreads, so she can't see my ratings for these books. Because, I mean, now she knows, I guess. But, so yeah, this book is about, like, it's a thriller. It's about this husband and his wife. And the wife just finds out that her husband has been cheating on her. So she's like, oh fuck. And then, you know, they're sending their son off to school, and then it's exposed that their principal has been essaying one of the children at the school. And so you actually end up finding out that they know the principal, and then you find out the person that was essayed was actually the kid of the main character. So these two people band together and they're like, let's kill this son of a bitch. So the husband and the wife, who were on the brink of a divorce, band together to kill him. And she's like a lawyer of some sort. And the book was good, but what actually pissed me off was that she got caught. Like, how she went about the murder was just fucking stupid to me. Like, you planned everything out, but you didn't really follow it that well. And that's actually what pissed me off about this book. Like, she planned everything out. Okay, so my gripes with this book is that, like, halfway through the book, I figured out everything that was gonna happen. So it wasn't really twisty. And I think the issue was that, like, I look for, like, things that are, like, super twisty and dramatic and messy. And they never are. And then even if they are like dramatic and messy, the twist is like never that good. Like, literally one of my favorite, not favorites, but literally one a thriller book that I liked a lot. Like, I got to the end and I was like, I fucking hate this ending. It was so shit. But yeah, so it wasn't really like twisty. I thought the main character, the main female character, was really fucking stupid. She was a lawyer, but when she was like planning out the murder, she really didn't plan it out that well. Like, she wasn't really looking at it from like every single angle. And I just feel like maybe this is just me, but I feel like maybe you would know a lot more about like a murder being a lawyer. And like, and then like, I just hate, things weren't going her way. And it's just, I don't know, thing that I hate that people do is like when they think that things are just gonna work out magically for them. Like, they just think that things are just gonna work the way that they wanted to just because they wanted to. And I'm like, that's not how life works. And that's how this character was. And like, even if it's like just a fictional character, it was just so frustrating because it's like, why do you think that this is gonna work the way that you want it to? Like, let's think of it logically. Like, why do you believe this is just gonna work out on your behalf just because? Like, come on now, that's not how life works. I don't know. And the husband was like a piece of shit, but at least his like POV was a lot better than hers. And I just felt like both the characters were killers. I don't think they give a fuck. Don't think they gave a fuck enough. Anyway, so now I'm gonna talk about The Weight of Blood. So this book was gonna be on my most disappointing books of the year, but I was like, no, I got something for you. This is going on my worst books of the year. So I did originally rate this book 2.5 stars, but then Jenna from Jenna Agaton did like a live stream for her full moon book club, and so Deja from Deja Book World was on there, and she convinced me, like, she was like talking to me about it, and I raised the rating up higher because I was like, oh yeah, she made a lot of good points. But like, now that I think about it, I'm like, no, it's still a 2.5 star. So this book is about this girl who is half black, half white, and she goes to the school and people believe that she's white. This book takes place in 2014 and it takes place in Georgia, and this school is not really segregated, but they have a segregated prom. And in my mind, if they have a segregated prom, the school is also segregated, because why would you have a segregated prom if your school isn't segregated? It's not, it may not be segregated on purpose, but even if that's just how the people flock, like, that's just how it goes. So one day it rains and her hair becomes poofy, and she ends up, like, people in her class end up finding out that she's black, and they start filming her and laughing at her. And it's a Carrie retelling. So literally, like I said, it's a Carrie retelling. So when I first, like, this book was first announced, I was looking forward to it. But I know the kind of books that Tiffany G. Jackson writes are like ones that like are racial commentaries, and sometimes like I like them, but then sometimes I just don't want to read that. So that's why I haven't read any Tiffany D. Jackson books, because this is my first one, because I know a lot of them have like racial commentaries, and it's just sometimes I just want to read about black people being happy, you know, sometimes. And so I knew what I was going into when I read this book, so that wasn't really a problem for me. But my issue is that this book is a carbon copy of Carrie. I'm not really a huge fan of like the book Carrie, but I love the movie. I'm a huge fan of the movie. This book is word for word, bar for bar Carrie. Like, if I would have rewatched this movie like right before I read the book, like it's just like like I don't know. And then it did add in like the whole like it wouldn't add in the reporter thing because that's also in the book, but it had that in there as well, and like that was useless to the story. And then I understand that like in Georgia was segregated for a very long time, and like this is very possible, but it just was not believable. I don't care. And it was like there's this one character who was like hanging out with like the white kids, and like the black people would be like, you know, why are you hanging out with them? And he'd be like, no, they're not like that. And it just, I don't know, I didn't like it. I'm sorry. It just, I don't know, it was a carbon copy of Carrie, and I just didn't like the whole segregation plot. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like her having to pretend to be white, just, well, it was more so on her dad's behalf, so like that did make sense, but it was just like in 2014 people finding out that you're white and reacting that way just doesn't make any sense to me. And then on top of the whole segregated prom, and like I said, I know that like that is very plausible, but I don't care. I didn't like it. There was no originality to it. And then it was like the fact that she was also like biracial, which was like, I feel like this could have had like a lot more commentary on that, I guess, and it kind of really didn't because her mom wasn't in her life, which was like, that's the point. And it was like, ugh. And then now I have to read the chapters about her dad, and like her dad hot combing her hair, and like it was exactly like the movie. So it was like, I get it, but it was like And then the romance was really weird. Like it wasn't bad or anything, it just happened like so fast, and he had a girlfriend, but whatever. The next book I have is Anna Frankenstein Makes Her Match. So I talked about this in my December wrap up, but I don't think I really went into it well. So this is about the sister to Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein. She's making her own monster. She's making her own boyfriend. And I just feel like this book was like really weird in like the SA way. Like even though he was a monster, like she just kept talking about his lower region and like how it just needed to be big, and she just needed to find a big part, and it was giving like, I don't know, Tessa Bailey in a way. And it was just like really weird. And she like yeah, he like wasn't really feeling it. Like he was like, bitch, I'm not even like human. Like what am I? Where am I? What's going on? What is the meaning of life? And she's like, let me touch it. And I'm just like, what's going on here? What's going on? So it was really weird. And Sally Thorne just should stop writing. Her best book, and I don't even like that book, is The Hating Game, and I'm not even a big fan of The Hating Game, honestly. So I feel like maybe she should put the pen down. Maybe you should put the pen down and go find a different hobby, because I don't think writing is for you anymore. Because I don't think she's had, like, everyone else likes The Hating Game. I personally still think that book is also creepy, but whatever. So the next book I have to talk about is These Violent Delights. I read this in a reading vlog, and I just thought that this book was boring. I know that like people don't like when I just reduce my opinion down of this book was boring, but like that's what this book was. It's supposed to be like a Romeo and Juliet retelling, but it was just boring. Like the romance was like very basic, and I could tell that this book was basically like, oh, I'm just gonna write like a popular trope that everyone loves so that people can love this book. It even took like the whole knife to the throat thing, which to me, everyone has been tweeting about how they want that trope, how they love that trope, and then for you to write it in your book, it just kind of seemed like pandering. Like I get that sometimes authors do that, but it was so blatantly obvious that that's what that was. Like it's kind of like how authors now write tropes so they can like go viral on TikTok. Even though this book came out before TikTok, that's exactly how it felt. I felt like the characters were boring. There was a lot of POVs in this book, but like there was nothing to really distinguish the characters from each other. And not like in the sense like I couldn't tell who was who, but like personality wise, like everybody was about as blank as a fucking piece of paper. Like nobody had any personality, and it's like the only personality Juliet had was that and that damn knife. And you're not Jude Duarte. I'm sorry. Like I don't know what to tell you. The whole like I don't know, it just felt like pandering. Felt like pandering. The romance, like sometimes the romance gave, but like it would almost go there, it would almost give, and then it would like pull back. And it was just so boring. Like it didn't have any plot line. It's like at this point, just write a romance. Just write a fucking romance. Like I am so tired of authors writing these fantasy books. They have these fantasy worlds. They have such good concepts, and then they don't do anything with it. And they're kind of just like, I'm gonna take this like really epic romance and foreshadow it. And like for me, I'm the kind of person who likes plot and characters. Like I can't have one, I can't just vibe and have characters, and I can't just like I mean it's fine if I just have a plot, to be honest, but it's like I need a little bit more, and like this book was just not giving that. The next book I had to talk about is You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty, which I'm kind of scared because I know that like when people didn't like this book, like the author, I think the author's like family was like going in on people. Like, hey, I'm just a reviewer here, don't come at me, don't shoot the messenger, okay? So yeah, at first when this book is about this girl who was hooking up with this guy in the beginning of the story. They kind of cut things off, and she also ends up meeting like one of his friends, and he tries to get with her, and she's like, what do you think, I'm a hoe? And she's like, ugh, I'm not a hoe, I'm not a homie hopper. And her best friend convinces her to be with him. So then they're together and they start dating, but they're not really like in a relationship, and they start like, you know, going out a lot. And then he ends up like taking her to like his hometown to meet his dad, and she ends up forming a romance with his dad. Personally, I just like, what the fuck was this book? Like, now listen, I noticed in the reviews people are like, oh my gosh, like she's dating his dad. Like that's just so like, oh my gosh, that's not me. I'm not new to this, I'm true to this. Like I've read like Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. Like you know, like Your Dad Will Do is on my TBR. Like I am not new to this, I am true to this. So I'm not one of those people who are like, oh my gosh, she's dating her boyfriend's dad. Like, oh my, I don't give a fuck. I liked this book. It was like funny, I loved it. The chemistry was not there. The chemistry was not there for like the like dad and Faye, and it's like the chemistry wasn't there. And this book was like supposed to be like this beautiful book that like is about like grieving and death, and it's just so like poetically written and beautiful. It wasn't. It like was poorly, like not poorly written, but it poorly like explored that trope, because like she, like her fiance or husband had like died, and she's like an artist, and she used to paint pictures with like pig's blood to like signify their relationship, whatever. So yeah, he died, and it doesn't really like, and she ends up bonding with the boyfriend's dad about like having like previous dead partners, but it's like you don't know anything about her partner. Like you don't know what she loved about him, you don't know anything about their relationship. You just know that like she loved him oh so much and she lost him. And I'm like, how is this a book that's like so beautifully written about like death and things like that, but like you can't even tell me like what their relationship was like? What did she love about him? Why was he the love of her life? I don't fucking know. And the relationship between like the dad and the boyfriend was just poor. And then I also hate how like the boyfriend, he's not really the boyfriend, but I keep calling him that. The boyfriend gets mad at her at one point in this book, and he like blows up, and he just does something like so shitty, and like it felt like it was written to like it, like for you to give, it felt like it was written for to give the readers a reason to not be mad at Faye, or to be mad at him instead of Faye. Like it just like, I understand that like, you know, he was upset and things like that, but it's like it just was so out of character for this person, because he was like so soft and like sweet, and like, I mean, he's a man, so it's like but you know what I'm saying, like it was really out of character for the guy, because he didn't show any signs, like no red flags, like nothing. I mean, he did love bomb the fuck out of her, like the beginning of the book. He was love bombing the shit out of her. But that's about it. But yeah, so the last book that I have to talk about is Daisy Hates, which like Magnolia Parks was my best book. This book is my worst book. So this book is right after Magnolia Parks, and this followed Daisy Hates. So Magnolia Parks, it doesn't really have a plot. It's just about this girl and her life, and she's the it girl of like London, and she's just so beautiful, and she's a biracial girl. And like that's one thing I love about her character, is that she's biracial, because we don't really get a lot of stories about like black people in that way. Like it's always like just like white girls who get these like fun stories. And so Magnolia Parks was like this Gossip Girl-esque books that just have like so much drama, so much like back and forth, like the love stories are crazy. Like it was just crazy, right? Not crazy, but it was just good. And so you go into this book, and Daisy is like this girl that, so one of the characters in Magnolia Parks, she had a relationship with this guy named Christian. It was like a secret relationship, and then it ended because her like all-time love ended up finding out. And so Christian ends up meeting Daisy, and they end up kind of like not really fake dating, but kind of fake dating, but also like hooking up. And so this follows like their story. And my biggest issue was that this book was fucking boring. Like there was nothing that happened in this book, and there was nothing that really happened in Magnolia Parks. But I liked Magnolia as a character. I liked the conversations that she was having. I liked the people she was around. I just feel like this book, I don't understand why we were following another group of people. And then especially because it follows like Daisy and her brother's like this drug lord of like of England, which I love. Jillian hates. He's a king. It like follows them, and like he has his own friend group, so she's in that friend group. So you have a bunch, 4 or 5 more people more introduced to the plot, and then she has her own friend group, and then she's also like, you switch plots, and then you get Daisy's life, and then you get Magnolia's life because Christian and Magnolia are friends and he hangs out with her. So a big reason why I dislike Daisy is because like she was so like mean to Magnolia and like being in her head, and it's like Magnolia is the girl, like you're just you, and it's just like you're just a brunette haired white girl, like calm down. And then this book felt like a carbon copy of Magnolia Parks, like literally just like in Magnolia Parks. Like Daisy has like this high school sweetheart that cheated on her with her enemy, and now he's back and he's trying to win her back, and they're like doing this back and forth dating thing, and she's like entertaining Christian, and it just feels like the author like wanted Magnolia to end up with Christian, but she also loved BJ, so she was like, let me recreate this story again but with another person. And then you added like a white girl. Like it was kind of just like, I don't know, like I think one reason why I love Magnolia is because she's black. Like that's a big reason as to why I love her. And like she's just like, she could be a black it girl, where it's like Daisy, like it's just like a regular white girl, like it's nothing new, it's nothing new to the table. And it was like reading the same book for a second time, except the characters weren't interesting, they were annoying. And then also this book had footnotes, and I felt like that was lazy because it would use it to further describe something. So like at one point it was used to describe a character, at one point it was used to describe a conversation that they had later. Like it was just so useless. And also one thing I hate about this book is the way that like it's written is so weird, because like it'll talk about like, and this is something I hate about the author's writing, because it's happened in Magnolia Parks too. They'll talk about something that happened in the past, and instead of signifying that it's from the past, like using italics or like separating the text or something like that, it'll literally just start going into past and it'll go right back into present. Like there's no indication that it's different. And it also does this thing where like these characters have nicknames, but like we don't know like anything about them. Like they'll just call this person a nickname, and then like they switch between nickname and like their real name like way too often, and it just feels weird. And there's like these text messages that are at the end of every chapter that is so fucking useless, and like I hate that the author writes like that. And then the end, like something just like so devastating happens at the end. It's kind of just like Daisy Hates is a coward. Daisy Hates is a fucking coward. She's a loser and she doesn't deserve happiness. And I won't be reading the Daisy Hates second book. I don't care. I'll read Magnolia Parks 2, and I'll probably read like, you know, Magnolia books, but I'm done with Daisy. She's boring. She's a carbon copy of Magnolia. She's not the it girl that Magnolia is. And it's just like, it also makes me question the author as a writer. Like I think if the author writes, the only way you're gonna keep me reading is if you write a black girl. The books literally should have followed like Bridget, which is Magnolia's younger sister, or like even one of the white girls in the friend group. I would have taken that. But it's just like, I don't care about Daisy. She's just some random character that you introduced to the plot line, and I just don't care. I don't give a fuck. And that's all I have to say. Yeah, that's it for this video. Tell me your least favorite book of the year, and I'll see you guys in my next video.